Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and today's lesson is going to be a continuation of a previous lesson from the third chapter in the book of Genesis. We made it all the way up till verse 13. We're going to take it from 14 all the way home to 24. And the first verse, well, first off, in the second chapter, we read of two trees. The originally created man is given a woman, but even before he's given her, we read of two trees, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life, and they are forbidden to eat from the first of these. But Satan slithers in and stimulates his deception. And the serpent was more crafty than any beast of the field which Yahweh Elohim had made. And he said to the woman, "Is it true that Elohim has said, 'Do not eat of every tree of the garden'?" The serpent is a serpent, but it's also more than a serpent. A talking serpent means that a supernatural entity is inside that serpent, because animals can't talk, yet this woman doesn't know. Eve is her name. She's given the name Eve in the range we're going to cover. She's only known as the woman hitherto, but the serpent remains. Satan, his question is to mislead and ultimately deceive and kill and throw the cosmos into chaos. All creation groans because of the fall. And the serpent was crafty then, and he is crafty now. There are two books in the Bible that he hates above all, and it's the one in the beginning and the one in the end. Genesis and Revelation. Genesis describes his devices, Revelation describes his doom, and there's been more scholarly attack against the book of Genesis than any other, and to more efforts to reduce it to legend and myth. And why? The answer is because Satan doesn't want you to know how he got hold of the first married couple. He doesn't want you to know what he said to Eve. He doesn't want you to know, so he attacks the book of Genesis, and his craftiness remains today. And then Eve's answer already, she's adding to or twisting, somewhat the commandment that had been given by Elohim. She's adding her own words, this telephone. Now, in Eve's defense, I do believe she bears in excess of the brunt of the blame for her role in this, but she did not have the direct divine revelation. Adam had that is clearly indicated in the second chapter, and then Eve is created after Adam, so Adam would have been the one to told her of the one commandment that they had to obey in order to stay in perfect paradise. And the serpent said to the woman, verse 4, "You shall certainly not die, for Elohim knows in that day you shall eat. Your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be like Elohim, knowing good and evil." Satan is the deceiver, and he's also the accuser. He's accusing Yahweh of having ulterior motives and holding them back. He's accusing them of wanting to keep hidden the knowledge that they can be exalted to his equal. So the fall of Lucifer, now when the fall of Lucifer took place, we know it was before Genesis 3, and it had to be somewhere after Genesis 1:31, because everything was created very good, and the sin of Lucifer is identical to the sin that he instilled in Adam. It was the aspiration and longing to be God, and Satan fell because he wanted to change one word in the Lord's Prayer. He wanted to be able to say, "Mine is the kingdom and the power and the glory." And when we trace back human rebellion, the same selfish motive emerges, the desire to say mine instead of thine. So within every man and woman and child, and even in the humblest of saints, it is a latent God complex, this desire to control everyone and everything all around us, to be sovereign and omnipotent, and just all these things that we wish we were. We try to play that ourselves. We become our own gods when we are apart from God, and the final and ultimate act of humankind rebellion will be when a satanically endowed man, he's known as the anti-Messiah, will sit in the temple in Jerusalem. The temple will be rebuilt, most likely in our lifetimes, and he will declare himself God. And so sin will thus complete its cycle. As it was in the beginning, so too shall it be in the end. And half of this promise is true. They're not exalted. They know, he promises them three things. Your eyes shall be open. You shall be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. The first and the third are true. The second of which is the deception. And that's what the sin was, the grasping and longing for equality, or just to be your own just be the only sovereign, omnipotent being in the universe. But their eyes were open. They immediately noticed they were naked, whereas formerly they had not been ashamed of their nakedness. Their eyes are opened in a very literal way. They see things they didn't formerly see for whatever reason. They were not ashamed when they saw their naked genitalia out in the open, and they knew good and evil because they had experienced evil by indulging therein. They had acquired the taste and the appetite for evil by departing from the commandments. They had one rule, one thing to obey, and they blew it. But you know what? We would have done the same thing because this human nature is what we all inherit from Adam. And there are, so verse 7, then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made loin coverings for themselves. So the first thing they did was make clothes for themselves. They were so ashamed, whereas formerly they were not, and their eyes are open. This is the first effect. This is their supposed path to godhood. They realize that they are naked, and then they craft a feeble clothes out of fig leaves together, and ultimately the original expiation, which is the theological term for a covering, the fur that Yahweh slays on their behalf to cover them. That is the forced sacrifice in Scripture. It was not Abel to Yahweh, but Yahweh to Adam. Then verse, they try and run and hide because they hear his sound, and then they want to get away from him. They know that they have rebelled. They know what they did wrong. They are fearful, which is a hitherto unprecedented emotion. And he says, I found out I was naked, so I hid myself. And he said, who made you know that you are naked? Have you eaten of the tree which I commanded you that you should not eat? Whenever divinity asks a question or demands an answer, it is not because he himself lacks the total range of knowledge of what he needs to know. It is simply to test the human recipient of his question. So he has no way of answering, but he does try and do the blame game to shift blame. And the man said, the woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree and I ate. In other words, you gave the woman who caused me to do this. How dare you? So he's got it all. He's just individual accountability and responsibility. Now, the legend has it is that, or I've heard said, this is one of the unprovable theories of theology, but the reason that Adam departed from the demand was because he knew his wife was determined to eat, and he loved her so much that he would rather die with her than live for an eternity without her. And Yahweh said to the woman, what is this you have done? And the woman said, the serpent deceived me, and I ate. So they are both judged and punished, the man and the woman, and there are permanent punishments for the female gender and the human race, and the serpent. So the original embodiment of these three animals, there may have been several serpents. They may reproduce quicker than humans, and it wasn't until the fall, and because of the fall, that fallen humanity was able to sexually procreate. That is another theory of out there, not necessarily my own. Verse 14, lesson itself. And Yahweh Elohim said to the serpent, because you have done this, you are cursed more than all the livestock, and more than every beast on the field. On your abdomen you are to go, and eat dust all the days of your life. Now what's perplexing here is that he's casting the punishment on an animal for something that Satan did. It was not there was nothing crafty about the serpent. First off, a serpent has a brain less than the size of a piece of sand on the sea. But we are not to question why. But for whatever reason, it was necessary. And snakes originally had 4 legs. They were able to walk, but they had that cursed and removed as a consequence of being infiltrated because Satan selected them. So we're not questioning the justice of divinity. We're just presenting to you the fact that it works on a whole nother level than we can possibly fathom, far less explain. And to eat dust all the days of your life, that is the punishment attached to the curse. And I put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. he shall crush your head, and you shall crush his heel. So the enmity which exists between the woman and the snake and her seed, which will be the reproduced children, which are, remember, only able to come about because of this fall. So we would not be here, you and I would not have been born if our most primitive ancestors did not fall. But the enmity between us and the state, now human beings are Satan's top prize and top targets. You know, we can, his demons can infiltrate an animal, but they really enjoy human beings above all others. But this speaks of the final victory on the cross. This is the 15th verse of the 3rd chapter of Genesis, is what is known as the proto-evangelism. That is to say, the original declaration of the Redeemer to come, and he shall crush your head. This was on the heel. Satan thought he won the great victory in the cosmic struggle of good and evil on Calvary, but he crushed his heel, but he crushed his head on the cross when the Redeemer came, and he's to be born of a woman, so not of an angelic seed. Her seed is capitalized, so this is a reference to the divine incarnate one to come. To the woman he said, I greatly increase your sorrow and your conception, bringing forth children in pain, and your desire is for your husband, and he rules over you. So there are 3 punishments that they are inflicted, and all because of Eve, the prototype of the female human, did what she did. So this punishment was passed on to the female gender, that they were to have the most physically painful experience. One of them imaginable is giving birth to a baby. So that was a consequence of the sin, but the joy that overwhelms once a childbirth. The kingdom is often compared to the experience of going through childbirth, and then the joy that just instantly and totally and permanently sweeps away the pain once you have that child in your hands, and that is likened to heaven in the same way. So the trials and tribulations that we endure and experience on earth will be washed away one day finally and completely. But the 2 other things is she, would desire her husband, and he was going to have, so she would desire, her desire for a husband would supersede her desire to live independently or, apart from a man. And they're to be a subordinate. Now, females are designed to do certain things that males can do. The same thing can be said of males. There are definite rules and governing the proper standards of gender roles. And I feel much of it is askew and amiss in modernism, but we don't want to take this discourse down that direction. And to the man he said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife, and have eaten of the tree which I commanded you, saying, do not eat of it, cursed is the ground because of you, and toil you are to eat of it all the days of your life. Work had existed in the Garden of Eden. Adam had to, plant his own food and stuff, but, from henceforth, the agriculture would be, the ground would be rocky, and he would have to work and really sweat to plant that which once grew without any labor or any real effort. But the work is not a curse because it was blessed and foreordained, and there was work before we fell, so there's nothing sinful in work. It is just a curse in itself, and work can be a curse if you are in a miserable career situation. But this is a lifelong thing, so life will be a struggle from henceforth, whereas once it was perfect and it was paradise, then you had to blow it because you you disobeyed this one commandment, do not eat of it. You could have had it, but you let yourself go astray because your love for this woman was greater than your love for me, and I gave you her, so how dare you? And it shall bring forth thorns and thistles for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. So they're going to have to break through thorns and thistles and weeds and just pricks and everything all around them, all these obstacles, physical obstacles in the ground. They're going to have to they're going to have to coexist with what they're trying to grow and what they're trying to eat. They're going to have these obstacles which are detrimental to its growth and growth potential and everything else, but they will eat the plants of the field, but they're going to have to sweat and toil in order to extract the plants from the ground. By the sweat of your face you are to eat bread until you return to the ground, for out of it you are taken. For dust you are, and to dust you return. That he came from dust is referenced in Genesis 2:7. He was created from the dust. So physically speaking, we are nothing special. What makes us special, uncommon, and unique, uncommon is an understatement, is the image of divinity which is endowed in us. And as to precisely what that means, no one knows exactly. The scripture is silent on the data of it, but well, the one thing we do know from that word is that we are a reflection of him, and we're going to leave it like that. We do have our own theory. We've explained it on other ones. We're not going to go there today. But this is just to keep him humble, to remind him from whence he came, because he had paradise on earth. Even though he came from the dust, he was given this garden with every want, need, and provision, and just a female companionship, someone he really loved. But the problem is that he loved her more than Yahweh. And the man called his wife's name Eve, because she became the mother of all living. Adam's name translates as man, Eve's wife translates as mother of all living. So even though it is a 3-letter word in the English language, it is a 4-letter word in the Hebrew original, at least as translated in the English language. But Eve is named just like all the livestock, all the animals in the garden, all the life forms. Adam was the first biologist, and he named. Now his wife was named was known as woman. And the man said, "This is now the bone of my bones and the flesh of my flesh. This one is called woman because she was taken out of man." So before he named her as a person, he named her as a gender. But she is the mother of all the living, and we are all genetically descended. And this often invites the inevitable question of incest, and it was necessary in the primordial phase. But then there are serious mental and moral health and physical health hazards to the practice of incest. But it was necessary, and it was from the beginning. And if you time out the human growth potential rate at 0.25% since Noah in 2,500, you got the world's population today. And Yahweh Elohim made coats of skin for the man and his wife and dressed them. So they tried to make figs and thistles and just this weak, flimsy exterior, just this lightweight covering that wasn't going to last, and flimsy and just can be blown over in the wind. Yahweh steps down and made coats of skin of the man. That means he killed maybe a fox or some fur, some creature with fur. We don't know quite what it is, but whatever it is, this is the first expiation. Expiation is the theological term for a covering, and it has sacrificial connotations. He became the sin covering, the expiation. But the original expiation, remember, the first sacrifice documented in Scripture is not not Abel and Cain sacrificing to Yahweh, but Yahweh sacrificing for Adam and Eve. And Yahweh Elohim said, "See, the man has become like one of us, to know good and evil. And now, lest he put his hands out and take also the tree of life and eat and live forever." So he is an Elohim of promises, and he promised him life, immortality, if he just ate from the tree of life. And if he continues to eat that from that tree, he's going to know good and evil, and he forsook that result, that reward, when he disobeyed him. He became too close to him. Now we know evil by experiencing evil. If our entire life was devoid of pain or evil or anything else, we would not have knowledge of evil, and we could not appreciate the good in the absence of the experience of the bad. So balance is necessary. This is not to embrace a morbid worldview, just spiritually, one with spiritual perspective in all circumstances of life. So Yahweh Elohim sent him out of the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which he was taken. He is also an Elohim of promise. He told him he would have to earn the bread by the sweat of his brow, and he just got him straight out of the garden. He was going to the farm field now. He forsook his privilege. He disobeyed. He had paradise on earth, and he blew it because he listened to his wife, who listened to the serpent, who was providentially sent to instill to launch the redemptive plan into motion. So redemption became necessary because Adam sinned, and even before that, because Lucifer sinned. Before Satan was known as Satan, he was known as Lucifer, outstanding among the angels in wisdom and beauty, until his great wisdom and beauty stimulated the sin of pride, and he fell. And the same sin, the longing and the aspiration for that which does not belong to any of us, the prerogatives and privileges and powers of divinity, was identical to the sin of Adam and Eve, and will be the final and ultimate act of mankind's rebellion. And he drove the man out, and he placed a cherub at the east of the Garden of Eden, and a flaming sword which turned every way, to guard the way to the tree of life. So the tree of life is the one thing that Yahweh Elohim does not want Adam to get to. So he puts an angel, he expels them, he kicks them out of the garden, and he puts a cherub. This is a multi-horned, multi-muscled, just angelic being, the guardian angel. When there's a cherub appears throughout the scriptures, and they have angelic connotations. The word in this one had a flaming sword, which if you walked by it, it was going to cut you and slice you up. There was no way past it, no way through the cherub sword. So good luck getting there. And this marks a devolution in human experience in life, but it was necessary for the plan and the path for the plan of redemption and the path of salvation. Adam's fall was necessary, and I don't think people are necessarily fair when they exaggerate Eve's role. Adam was the first created man. He had the direct revelation from divinity himself, and he did not, he knew it, but he blew it. And that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. Stay tuned until next time. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.